Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting for Monday, July 11th, 2016. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present. First item on the agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 27th, 2016. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. This evening we have 3 items on the P&D agenda. I have a number of speakers who have signed up to speak to item P3, and what we will do is we will go through the items one at a time, and as we get to the respective items, the speakers will have an opportunity to speak as we get to those items, so we don't tie up the other items that come ahead of that. Item P1 is Resolution 54R16, approving a plat of subdivision for 1900 through 1904 Asbury Avenue. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 54R16 to grant approval of the proposed subdivision of the property located at the address from 1 into 2 lots. The proposed subdivision would include an ingress and egress easement over the south lot to allow access to the garage on the north lot from Emerson Street. Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that will be presented to the council this evening for action. Item P2, Ordinance 49016, modifying the notice requirement provisions for planning and zoning cases. The Plan Commission and staff recommend approval of the zoning ordinance text amendment to establish applicants' responsibility for mailed noticing requirements for planning and zoning cases. The proposal allows the city to contract the mailing of notices for planning and zoning cases to a third-party service and makes the applicant responsible for the cost of that mailing service. This is for introduction. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second? All right. Alderman Rainey?
Alderman Wilson, why, or staff, why is it that we cannot just leave this obligation to the applicant?
Good evening. Mark Munzer, Director of Community Development. Alderman Rainey, we want to ensure that the staff is providing the property information, and we want to make sure that we're in the loop and that we always have an idea of who's being notified for each case. If it was just with the applicant, which I agree, ideally, maybe something we want to look at, then we would be out of the loop.
They do it other places, and it's so much staff time.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, I think having the outside service do the literal logistics will cut a lot of that staff time.
Will we be passing on the exact cost to the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, the vendor will directly invoice the applicant.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That matter will be before the council for introduction. Item P3, Ordinance 47016, Plan Development for 1815 Ridge and Oak Avenue. Plan Commission staff recommends adoption of Ordinance 47016 for approval of the plan development with rezoning from C2 commercial to D4 downtown transition and a special use for independent and assisted living units. The 10-story, 163-unit residential building would consist of 102 independent and assisted living dwelling units, 31 assisted living units for residents with cognitive impairment, 30 memory care units, and contains 67 parking spaces on site. The development includes one site development allowance for 102 dwelling units, where a maximum of 84 are allowed in the D4 zoning district. This is going to be for introduction before the council. Is there a motion?
move approval.
Is there a second? Second. And I think,
I'm signed up. My name is Dan Shapiro, and I'm signed up to speak about this. Would now be the appropriate time.
no, you're kind of just jumping in and interrupting me. So.
I apologize for that.
Okay. What we're going to do is we are going to have 2 presentations. One presentation will be from the applicant. I understand that we have a second presentation from some neighbors. And then I would like those individuals who are signed up to speak to have an opportunity to speak. And if there's anybody else who wanted to speak to it, you could sign up as well. Right. I think the presenters have also been advised that the presentations be limited to 15 minutes. So with that, applicant, would you please come forward and make the presentation?
Just going to put my timer on. Good evening. My name is Michael McLean. I'm with the developer proposing the project for 1815 Oak. I'm also a resident of Evanston and have a current development going on in town at 1571 Maple Avenue. The reason, thank you for hearing us tonight. I appreciate the time, and I'd like to figure out where the presentation went. Oh, this is theirs. I'd like to take.
This is the clicker.
This is the clicker. I'd like to take a little bit of time just to talk to you about some of the changes. As you're aware, we were approved by the Planning Commission several months ago. And since then, we've had a number of continued meetings with the neighbors in the room, as well as the Mount Zion Church congregation, and meetings with the aldermen to discuss potentially how to change our building to address some of the continued concerns of the community. What we were able to accomplish is listed on this chart here. What I'd prefer to do is show it visually, and I will read these numbers to you as I go through. So we were able to cut several floors off the building, including in a number of different locations. There was a tower element to the east. I apologize, the pointer's not working. But overall, we were able to drop our peak height from 158 feet to 135 feet of gross height. That's not necessarily the height that's counted under the zoning code. We were able to, 158 feet to 128 feet, a drop of 30 feet. The lower roof was dropped from 135 feet to 105 feet. That's 30 feet. That's a 20% change in the height of the building overall. We were also able to drop our floor area ratio from 4.9 to 5.35. A 12% change in floor area ratio, resulting in a 20,000 square foot reduction in the amount of square footage that we're proposing to build. In addition, we changed our unit count significantly. We had originally come in as primarily an independent living facility with some assistance and some memory care. We decided that in order to accommodate the changes that the neighborhood was asking for, which was a lower height and lower density, to make it primarily an assisted living building, which provides 3 meals a day and other assistance with daily activities, which our management company will talk to in a few moments. But as you can see on the images above, the one on the left, the yellow indicates the independent living floors, where we dropped from 5 to 2 and increased the amount of assisted living. The whole building was able to maintain a bed count of 163 bedrooms or unit, or dwelling units and rooming units combined. That's the right way to say that. The current count is 33 independent living units, 100 assisted living units, 30 memory care units. So our dwelling units dropped from 140 to 102. So that's a 27% drop in dwelling units proposed, which is our only development allowance that we're requesting. So we've dropped down to 18 from 54. Our parking, on the ground floor use, we had a parking lot almost exclusively with very little usable space. We've now reduced that parking lot and increased the usable space. So now our street frontage is activated. We have offices that will be there. We have a lobby that will be there. And it'll be a greater connection to the community and the streetscape. It's approximately 4,300 square feet of usable space on the ground floor. The parking did meet code when we were approved by the Planning Commission. It currently, in our opinion, exceeds code. It is written as meets code. That is based on an employee count. Our original estimates could have been up to 100 employees, just to be on the very high side of the estimates early on. Now that we have our partner and management company on board, we've been able to more accurately estimate our employees to 65 employees on the payroll, 49 maximum per day, and 40 maximum per week. Between the 67 spaces we're providing on site and the ability to valet 126 spaces on site, we believe that we are more than adequately covering any potential needs for visitors, guests, and other employees. Here's just a chart, which I don't expect you to read from here, indicating the breakout of hourly staff by shift and by staff role. And you can see the care shifts at the bottom. Also want to point out that while we did not agree initially to provide train passes for our employees, we did submit an employee transportation plan. The reason why we did not initially agree to a train pass is that we expect most, if not all, of our residents will come from Evanston, which means that if they're coming from the west, a train pass doesn't do them any good. So we will need bus passes, we will need car shares, we will also use our service bus to pick up within a 2 or 3 mile radius to make sure that we can properly incentivize all of our employees to leave their cars at home or perhaps give them up completely. Our public benefits, when we were approved by Planning Commission, we had one development allowance. We've amended that. We still only have one, but it was the number of dwelling units from 56 down to 18. Our public right-of-way is our leading public benefit. Currently, the Green Bay Ridge Plan calls for the city to re-landscape most of our property that we are purchasing from the city, as well as from the private seller. We are proposing to doing it as a public benefit for this project. That includes an 8-foot parkway of trees, a new 5-foot sidewalk, 2 parklets, as well as sidewalks connecting all the way from Ridge across our property down through Oak, which does not currently have a sidewalk, and properly connect all the streets and sidewalks to make it safe for pedestrians. On the left, you can see a rendering of our parklets and parkway along Ridge. In the middle, you'll see just a sliver of the Green Bay plan, highlighting that property, the triangle to the north of the former teleservice building, a rendering of what a little streetscape might look like on our property, as well as potential parklet ideas or pocket park ideas for the public to use as sitting and recreation. Here's one of the telling things about our site, and we tried to gear our public benefits towards it. To the south of Clark Street, this is what Oak looks like. All right, it's well maintained, it's well landscaped, it's well utilized. This is what it looks like to the north of Clark Street. And these are our renderings of what it could and should look like along Ridge on the left, the alley in the center, and Oak Street on the right. Public benefit number 2 would be the installation of public art within our little parklets. Public benefit number 3, traffic and safety improvements. We have proposed to provide high visibility crosswalks and even countdown timers on some of the poles, which will connect our property better to downtown Evanston via Oak to Church. We have a substantial green roof and patios on our property. Extra bicycle parking, not just for our employees and residents, but for the public use on the exterior of the building. Employment. We intend that all of our employees will come from Evanston. We will do our best to attain that goal, subject to qualifications. And 65 employees in downtown Evanston we feel is a very, very strong public benefit, and we're very, very proud to be able to offer that if this gets approved. Affordable housing. Although we were proposed before the inclusionary housing ordinance was approved, we did propose 2 on-site units and 4 $100,000 payments, so the equivalent of 6 affordable housing units. These the on-site units will be in the independent living, as they still get 1 meal a day. They still get housekeeping once a week and the wellness programs and the social and recreational programs. But with the assisted living, with a greater number of aides and meals and things like that, it was impossible for us to work that in. We did extensively research affordable options and subsidized options at the state and federal levels, and unfortunately, Illinois is currently the worst state in the country for helping our seniors who need assistance. Public benefit number 8 is a $10,000 DV contribution. This is a rendering placing the building on Google Earth, showing its context within the multiple mid and high rises surrounding the site. This picture is looking east. You can see E2 on the left and Optima Views on the right. These pictures are more in context views. It looks very much like the downtown plan has given us guidelines for. The building is even the same shape and location as the downtown plan has given us guidelines for, along the train tracks, fitting in nicely, just higher than 1717 and way lower than E2. And now I will introduce our partner for the first time publicly is Ridgeline Management Company, and Ryan Housekeeper is here to introduce them.
All right. And just so you know, you've got about 3 minutes left.
I will be brief. Yes, Ryan Housekeeper with Ridgeline Management, and I basically just want to give a quick overview on the management company to get a flavor for who's coming in, ideally to represent and provide services within this community. Ridgeline Management was formed in 2002 with the mission statement of creating environments where moments of joy, independence, and wellness are the focus each and every day. And that's the aspiration and the mission that is followed by Lisa Sheldon, the president of the management company, all the way down to any individual that's working at the facility. Almost all people can recite that mission statement. And so there's a real passion that started actually from the doctor, Dr. Chuck McGlade, who formed the company in 2002, to really have a care focus, but really to maximize the independence of residents that even are in need of assistance and memory care. And so he's developed a couple of different programs for maximizing that, called Balance Fit program is one, for example. I know that there's an emphasis on trying to reduce trips to the hospital. Obviously, we want our residents to be as healthy and live as long as they can in the facility. And so we've had a real focus on trying to diagnose people that need certain service care income and have certain programs assessed, even if they have to go to the hospital prior to coming back to the facility. They have the opportunity to have the management company assesses them to ensure that they are appropriately cared for and to reduce the likelihood of a fall or other problematic event that would bring them back into the hospital. So I just want to stress that the Ridgeline Management is really about the care side, but maximizing independence. One of the things we really like about being in Evanston is the accessibility to the community, accessibility to civic options that the university has. We know that seniors, in order to attract a younger, more active senior, we need to have amenities outside of just the facility. And so being in the city of Evanston provides a great opportunity for that, having the proximity to Northwestern University. So I'll just leave it at that and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at this point? We'll regroup when we're discussing, but Alderman Fisk?
Yes, I'm confused. Who is the operator? Could you tell me again?
Ridgeline Management?
Okay.
All right, thank you. And I understand the neighbors have a presentation as well? Okay. Okay, now's the right time.
I was a little gun shy. Thank you, and please accept my apologies
it's
for
fine,
interrupting you
it's fine.
before. My name is Dan Shapiro. I'm here on behalf of the 1800 and 1830 homeowners associations, which are across the street and comprise of about 60 units. We appreciate the developers' changes that they spoke about just a couple minutes ago. I would just add that I do not believe that the Plan Commission has seen any of those changes since they came after the Plan Commission hearing. So to the extent that this body feels it needs to send it back to Plan Commission, I just make that point. As you know, we have several concerns which we would like to address to this body. Plan developments in this community have to obviously comply with the rules, and your rules here are very clear on what needs to be done, especially with respect to complying with other planning documents such as the downtown plan, and complying and being consistent with the surrounding area and the zoning ordinance. Even as revised, although it is compliant, we suggest that the height here is much different and not compatible with the surrounding properties and with the surrounding buildings. If you look at the next illustration here, you'll see, and you just saw some of the aerials, but you'll see this illustration, which I think is even more compelling, that at 128 feet, this property is at least a third taller than many of the surrounding buildings, and sometimes as high as, twice as high as some of the surrounding buildings. Again, what the code says, what the PD documents say, is that there has to be some compatibility. So what's another document that the zoning ordinance with respect to the plan development ordinance says about complying with planning documents? And that's the 2009 plan. And at the northwest edge, you'll see right there, that's where our building is. That's where the proposed building is. And according to that planning document, there's a 66-foot max without any development allowances, and I'll speak to development allowance in just a moment. 110 with the development allowance. So even looking at it both ways, it is not consistent with the downtown plan. There was some discussion about being inclusive with the new inclusionary, being consistent with the inclusionary housing ordinance. Yes, there does seem to be cash in lieu, but it doesn't seem to be fully compliant in this particular instance. Most of the public benefits that you heard are either site allowances that are required by a PD anyway, or public benefits which really benefit this project. I'm not saying all, but I am saying most. So under zoning ordinance, it says that the public benefits, by a vote of 2/3 of the city council, there has to be a finding that the public benefits are essential or necessary to basically support the allowance. And in this case, the one allowance that they're seeking is very significant. The question that this body would have is, are the public benefits essential for the permission or the exceedance of that allowance? Now, with respect to the density issue, we see that the same number of proposed units are pretty much the same. It's the mix that is different. So it's 165 versus 163, and you can see for yourself on this chart that independent living has gone down significantly by about 90 units, and assisted living has come up significantly, probably about 50 units. But in all, the number of units remains the same. The allowance that is being requested is to go from 84, which is according to the strict terms of your zone ordinance, to 163. So going back to the discussion about public benefits. With respect to some of them, you'll see that traffic control improvements, again, that's a site improvement that is required under the PD ordinance. Green roof and terrace, lovely, but it seems to be primarily benefiting this development and the other proposed public benefits. We talked about the cash in lieu. 10% of the 102 dwelling units would be required. So instead of a $400,000, I'm sorry, 10% would equal 10 units. So instead of 400,000, it would be 800,000 would be required for the 8 units. They're short on that. Let me go to the next slide. Now, another thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is the developer's explanation of what they're doing has been very clear to us. And what they've said both in writing tonight and other nights is that they're going to provide basically around-the-clock care, and that they define that in their proposal as assisted living. You'll see amenities, as they suggested, include 3 meals a day, housekeeping, laundry, security, emergency response, with assistance with activities of daily living. Now, if you look at your code, and what we put here in red is those facilities that include personal care such as assistance with activities of daily living shall be licensed as shelter care facilities pursuant to the city code. So in accordance with what they said they're doing, it's almost a mirror image, or very, very close to the same language that says in this zoning ordinance, in your zoning ordinance, that shelter care. Shelter care is not indicated as either a special or permitted use in the D4, which is our zoning district at issue here. So what they're asking for at the present time, and based upon their application and representations, is not something that would be otherwise permitted. The other thing that we noticed was that the petitioner has said that this is going to be comparable to other developments such as Westminster, Three Crowns, King Home, and the Mather. But if you look at that chart, it is anything but in terms of the types of units: assisted living, shelter care, intermediate, and skilled nursing long-term care. We appreciate what the developer has done, but what they have done is simply not enough, and doesn't straight on respond to some of the concerns that we have had, and that we'd like to again echo before you, which include the allowances, which include the mass, the inconsistency with some of the plan with the downtown plan, the inconsistency with the very requirements of PD in the zoning ordinance. The proposed public benefits do not provide a necessity or a strong basis for an increase of density of 94%, which would otherwise, the 83 or 84 units, which would otherwise be what would be permitted here. It is being suggested and sought for a type of use that is neither permitted nor special in the D4, because it's a sheltered care use and not an assisted living use. The last thing that I would ask is that to the extent there's further consideration by this body, it would seem to me to be appropriate that the revised plans get returned back to the Plan Commission for its consideration and for the public's consideration. Thank you.
I'd like to know why the number of units, the mix of units changed from the developer.
The mix of units changed in order to accommodate the request from the neighbors to lower the height and density of the building. So in order to change the unit mix, we had to, in order to change the building, we had to shrink the units from 800 square feet to 400 or 500 square feet. We can't, that's not appropriate for independent living, so we went to assisted living. The assisted living model still worked very well. Our own market study, which is in the packet, indicates an immediate need for over 600 assisted living units in a 4-mile radius. So it was well supported by the feasibility study, and we were able to accomplish what the community had asked us to try and do after the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to ask staff about assisted living in D4. Not assisted living, sheltered care in D4.
We had a meeting today. I had one with the zoning administrator, Mr. Latinovich, and Deputy City Attorney, Ms. Mason Cup. One of them can respond to that.
Good evening, Chair Wilson, members of the committee. Demir Latinovich, Planning and Zoning Administrator for the city. What the residents and the attorney for the neighbors are alleging is that this proposed facility should be classified as sheltered care facility rather than assisted living facility. When we receive an application like this, we evaluate what they're proposing, what it looks like, what really the services are that are provided in there, and then we compare that with the most appropriate definition that we have in the zoning ordinance. And then we also compare that with some of the other facilities in the city that we've classified as either or. And what we have found is that based on their services, based on what they're proposing to provide, they're not providing 24-hour oversight of the residents, and they're not providing a skilled care facility, which is required for a sheltered care facility. So on top of that, the state of Illinois would not classify this type of facility based on the services as a sheltered care home, so it does not make sense for us to classify it as that, to be in contradiction with the state of Illinois. So we feel very confident that this facility, based on their proposal, qualifies as an assisted living facility.
But then it just sounds like that based on what he just said, that the number of units that they have designated shelter care have been made smaller, but they're really not necessarily legally sheltered care. Is that?
I mean, I'll let the applicant respond to that, but what they've indicated is that the units are smaller because they fit the model for assisted living facility. And so there's just more units that are assisted living units and less independent living units.
Okay.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
So the state of Illinois very clearly designates the use of these types of properties by licensing, and they issue separate licenses for each of these different uses. A supportive living facility, sheltered care, assisted living, memory care, nursing home, all have very, very specific definitions. This presentation attempts to skew those definitions to make ours be a sheltered care, which it's not. It's an assisted living. And if we functioned as a sheltered care, would actually be penalized and then shut down by the state if it didn't cease to do so. So there's no possibility of this building functioning as a sheltered care. And the primary reason for that they've brought up is the 24-hour supervision and monitoring of mental and health status of residents who are incapable of maintaining a private independent residence, incapable of managing themselves. That person is illegal to be a resident in an assisted living or independent living or memory care state license. They must be asked to leave and placed in a proper facility.
Could you bring up, did you have a slide on the units? Could you just, I'm trying to go through here and find this.
So
Okay, so you have no sheltered. What you're saying here is
No shelters, no.
sheltered. Okay.
And there's a point of confusion that around dwelling units and rooming units that I'd like to also talk about. The simplest way to talk about it is if there are kitchens or no kitchens, right? A rooming unit has no kitchens. So when the city and we have evaluated what we were putting on the property, we increased some of the rooming units, we decreased some of the dwelling units, such that we only have 18 actual defined legal dwelling units above what is allowed under the D4 zoning. We have more dwelling units, but our floor area ratio is significantly below what is contemplated under the D4 zoning. So theoretically, we could add another 30 to 40,000 square feet, somewhere along those lines, of floor area to this building, eliminate all the kitchens, and have many more rooming units under the D4 zoning. We didn't do that. We did what we did to reduce the heights and the overall density of the property. But there's a discrepancy there as far as dwelling units versus rooming units, and hopefully that clears that up.
All right, thank you. I had a couple questions too. I think I'd like to go ahead and have the people who signed up speak, and then we'll continue with the questions and discussion, if that's okay. So, thank you, Alderman Ravel. Mr. Shapiro, you've already spoken, right? You're first on the list, but I assume, okay, thank you. So Robert, and you'll have to free me, I can't make out the last name.
I'm Robert Canizero, live at 1800 Ridge, retired architect. I thank you for hearing us today. My opinion, and I think of many of my folks, is that we want the laundry site developed to be successful. We want whatever goes there to be a very successful project. It's in our interest. It's in the city's interest. It's in the developer's interest. It's my feeling that this project, as proposed, is at risk for all of these. For the city, there's an argument about it, but the plans are not consistent with the downtown plan and the zoning ordinance, and in terms of number of units and what have you. That's a concern. It's a single-use building, and we know that single-use buildings don't contribute to a healthy urban environment. It needs retail. As far as the neighborhood is concerned, we're still concerned about the height of the building, and we're concerned about the parking. We continue to be concerned about that. The quality of the architecture leaves a lot to be desired. One of the things that got passed over in the last meeting, which I'm quite concerned about, is firefighting. Not all firefighting happens on the inside of the building. The reason you have ladder trucks is because often you have to fight a fire from the outside. But on a third, there are only three sides to this building. One of these sides, you can't get there with a ladder truck. And you'd have to fight the fire from the right-of-way of the railroad. So that concerns me. As far as the success of the project as planned for the developer, he's worked hard on it. I've heard many presentations, and I know he's really tried to make it right. But I continue to think that this use is just not compatible with this exceptionally noisy site. I live across the street. I can attest to the noise. The aesthetics in coming and going to this building are really unfortunate. The people enter and exit their building through a dark automobile passageway, an alley, and then they see an abandoned service station. It's repurposed as a parking lot. And there's no nearby park for them to walk to. They can walk down the sidewalk, but I mean, in terms of getting to a park, they have to go a good ways for a senior. I'm a senior, I know. And so, just to repeat, we want a successful project, and I personally doubt whether this one can be as proposed.
Thank you. Maria Policelli? Hi.
Hi, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the use categories in sheltered care, if I can get back to that. So you heard about the state laws, but what I want to point out is Evanston has their own ordinance. We're a home rule unit, and home rule rules. The Illinois Supreme Court upheld that, so we can't ignore our definition. I think if you look around, if you call the King home, they market themselves as an assisted living facility, but how are they licensed? They're licensed as sheltered care. They're in an R6 zone, and sheltered care is allowed in R6. So other facilities have followed this reg. It's a conservative definition. Evanston made a choice and put this in to require facilities that are offering assistance with activities of daily living as sheltered care. What's the distinction? Let me briefly walk you through the spectrum. I've walked the spectrum with a loved one with Alzheimer's. You have assisted living, then you have sheltered care, and that's under the long-term care umbrella that's licensed federally. Next is intermediate care, and then is skilled nursing. So what you're asking is that these facilities offering this kind of service take an extra step and ensure the safety of our seniors. If you call Westminster Place, they have sheltered care, intermediate care, and skilled nursing. That allows a senior to really age in place. I've heard it referred that this will offer multiple levels to allow someone to age in place, but once they're out of assisted living, they need to find somewhere else to live. So I encourage you to call facilities, see what they offer, and really think, what does this facility offer? I have huge concerns about memory care in this building. You've heard that it's not going to have 24-hour care. The memory care is going to be a locked floor with dementia patients. I just feel that there's inconsistencies in what's being presented and what's being asked of licensing. So I ask you to consider, is memory care right in this facility with 65 trains on an average Monday going by? Thank you for listening to our concerns and for continuing to keep the community's interest in mind.
Thank you. All right, David Baldwin?
Others have covered my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dan Spoke? Sport, Dan Sport, thank you.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, neighbors, for everyone for coming out today. I will make it brief because I think a lot of great points have already been made, things I would have spoke to, so I won't waste the time and belabor the points. I do want to just kind of hit on what is kind of the major thing for us as neighbors to this parcel of land that's been somewhat labeled as an island, as forgotten space. To us, that's not forgotten space. It's our part of Evanston. It's our home. It's our community, and we are very vested in that. And as Bob eloquently spoke, we want something there that's in the character of Evanston, the character that we love and that we live here for, that the reason we don't live in the city of Chicago, that we aren't in the super dense neighborhoods. We are our own city and we have our own identity, and we want to promote that and keep that healthy and the viable character that it is. So I guess mostly what we want to talk about is just the density, the extreme density of this site, and you can see it in even their images for the property, right? Their Google Earth images, if I can find them. I mean, right now the whole argument for why this zoning should be allowed at the super height and super density is for E2. But most of all the neighbors, anyone I've talked to, even council members and esteemed officials in the city of Evanston, have a little bit of buyer's remorse over E2. It is a terrible, terrible eyesore on our community. It's way out of scale, way out of proportion, and honestly, it's the cheapest architecture possible. I speak as a practicing architect. This is just the kind of garbage that we don't need in Evanston. We need something better, of a higher quality, a higher caliber that we have come to expect, and the reason why we are part of this community. I apologize. Anyway, I think everyone else has probably covered a lot of the other bullet points I had, so I don't want to take too long, but I just want to urge you guys to please take that into mind when you're making these decisions. Don't take it lightly. Think about us as the people that live with this in and out every day, that have to experience this building as soon as we step out our door, on our way to and from work, going to the train, and those kind of things. So, if you would, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ravel, you had a question or questions?
I got a little confused about the kitchens. Sorry. So some of the assisted living units will have kitchens and some won't, or?
Correct. Correct.
Could you describe what the residents would be like who are in the assisted living units, or are they a range of health or?
Everyone that enters this building is put through a very detailed health screening by their private physician. No one can be admitted to as a resident in this building if they do not pass that health screening to be a fully functioning, healthy older adult. That being said, that doesn't mean they're necessarily cooking every day. It doesn't mean they necessarily don't have need assistance getting in and out of the bath. Or possibly getting dressed, or mobility issues just to get to the dining room. Some of the residents, the memory care, again, has no kitchen. It's basically a larger hotel room, more like an extended stay hotel room might be, where you have a small little refrigerator and a sink. The assisted living people may have a spouse who can cook or can shop or can do something, and their spouse may not. So the idea behind assisted living versus all the other categories is that the residents must be able to attend their own need for exiting if there's an emergency, or within the realm of the staff that's provided. We only have 4 to 8 people on staff overnight. So there's no way we could possibly monitor the health and mental wellness of our residents. They do have their keys to their units, and they do, especially in the independent, those are their homes, and they're considered their homes, whether they need assistance in daily activities or not. The 30 cognitive assisted living units would not have kitchens for safety's sake. But most of the other assisted living units would have small kitchens, and the independent would have regular kitchen like an apartment would.
Okay, because I'm just trying to picture how many of the residents in this building will actually venture out on their own to go to the movies or restaurants in downtown Evanston, and how many will be basically just living most of their day in the facility.
I'll have Ryan answer how they venture out. Mm-hmm. What we didn't talk about, because it wasn't part of our very short presentation, was the fact that we have a huge amenity floor on our third floor. Almost the entire third floor is taken up by dining rooms, commercial kitchens, health and wellness, fitness facilities, recreation, a community room, business center, cafe, gardening, and many other social wellness programs. So the intent, and large outdoor patios. And the intent is that the senior that lives here does not have to venture out, but Ridgeline is in particularly good at bringing in community members like high school students, and bringing seniors out to things like the university. So.
Well, yeah, that's why we have, mainly the point I want to make is just that we have a common community bus for the reason they have scheduled transportation events. We understand that it may be still a fair good sized walk for somebody, even a couple blocks to go, but the proximity to amenities are a very short drive on a community bus, and you have regular scheduled transportation and events. And the beauty of the location is the frequency of those can be quite high because of the close proximity for transit from the community bus. And like we said, that will be regularly used for employees and for residents for dropping them off at transit stops, proximity to work, actually picking them up, but also for the scheduled transportation events that we hope to collaborate with the university. And like Mike said, we hope to be encouraging people within the community to come to the facility, use the ample common area, and to maximize the mentoring center option that we like to perpetuate, which is really to encourage, to stimulate the minds of seniors by giving back to young people within the community. So.
And just while you're
Before you sit down, yeah.
and while you're at the microphone, so do you happen to have a sister relationship with another facility? Because I am concerned about when the people who are in the assisted living units, when they need more, more care, where are they going to go?
We would be building relationships as part of the process once, when the development starts, 6 months prior to actually opening. Ridgeline Management will be actively involved in the operations side of getting an administrator hired. And in that time period, and in that process, in that marketing process, there's going to be a relationship that's going to be built with a variety of different communities within the greater area. So affordability is an issue. Here might be another option. Skilled nursing, here's a variety of different options for skilled nursing facilities. Because what we are not is a skilled nursing facility. We've never been a skilled nursing, nor will we ever be. So in every facility, in every market that we go into, we're always building relationships with skilled nursing facilities for references.
If I may, as far as the pricing goes, I'm sure you probably don't have a menu prepared yet, but the price point compared to the Mather or other facilities in town, where do you see yourself as being?
I believe the Mather is a buy-in. Is that a buy-in?
It's a buy-in, right?
Yeah. So we are not a buy-in. There would be a small community fee that would probably be close to a month's rent or half of a month's rent. That may be a non-refundable fee. We're looking at around $39.50 to start on the independent living side, and around $5,000 to start on the assisted living side. And for skilled nursing, or not for memory care, it would go up to $7,000 is around where that would be for memory care. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Unfortunately, we asked the question. It's just not our policy to take the questions from the field.
Well, not a question. I was wondering, I didn't have a chance to put my name on the list, and Mr. Baldwin behind me didn't use his time, so I was wondering if I could have 2 minutes.
Okay, just very quickly.
I'm the least eloquent of the people that live across the street, so you'll get this in bullet points. Based on your questions themselves, you notice that this is a bit of an algebra task. You've heard little bits of here and little bits of here where it isn't quite a D4, but it is a D4. Is it nursing? Just now he called it skilled, even though earlier we heard it wasn't. We've heard, just listen, I've listened to 6 or 7 of his presentations already, so allow me to. I know his presentation by heart. But a handful of things. Number one, we went from 165 to 163. Okay, it's still 94% higher density than was allowed. 84 was the baseline. The height, you've already heard, was supposed to be 66 feet, and now we're at some debatable number, whether it's 138 or 148 or what have you. Okay, you've heard about the allowances that have been made as far as public benefits. Some of those same allowances, they kind of sound like what I heard in this room when we were involved in the Green Bay Emerson Ridge, new sidewalks, new paving, new landscaping. It sounds like we're counting the same thing twice. This time we're counting it as his benefit as opposed to what you all voted on not long ago when we were going to renovate the streets. In terms of a number of other things, we hear contradictions. Just now their expert didn't know what the Mather was. Think about it. This is our community. They had an entire year to find a person to be their partner. They had to hire someone from the Pacific Northwest. No one in the Midwest was able to sign a contract with them. The person didn't know what the Mather is.
Stop. Okay.
Okay.
If you have something relevant, we've already heard everything that you're recapping things,
Okay.
and you're kind of
yes. One last relevant part. Nowhere in their math have they presented to you the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, the physicians, the private duty caregivers that are all part of an ecosystem for this type of facility, which very frequently, based on lots of our personal experience, is equivalent to the size of the staff itself. So when he's saying he has 30 or 40 people or what have you, and how it relates to parking and how they're all going to be from Evanston, that's saying that the occupational therapists, the physicians, and all these other special care people that visit on a regular basis, dozens per day, are somehow all going to be from Evanston, and none of them are going to need parking. So I, once again, point out that this has been a little bit of an algebraic equation with how to get past lots of things to come up with a usable solution, but it is not an ideal solution. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Okay, just to point out, this is for introduction tonight. It will be presented at a council meeting in the future. We will be voting later to introduce it, but everyone will have an opportunity to voice your opinions, share your views with the council members over the next few weeks. So all in favor of introducing a council?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so 4-1, and it will be introduced at council. Thank you. Mr. Munzer, do we have any communications?
No, Mr. Chair.
Any additional items for discussion?
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Council, we will reconvene in maybe 5-10 minutes. For those of you who were wondering about the APW meeting, we will address the APW items at the council meeting due to the quorum situation earlier. Thank you very much.